Greetings, friends. Welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. I'm thrilled to be here with you guys. We are in spring break here in Florida. We are enjoying the spring weather down here, and it's actually kind of up and down. One day it's like 79 degrees, the next day it's like 50. So we're trying to figure it out here in Florida. But with that said, I do want to go ahead and start the show. So first things first, the Let's Get Gritty platform, our Let's Get Gritty podcast, will be featured on Spotify and all of my main social media channels. I do have a mouthful of channels, and I'm trying to figure out how to get them all to one handle. But until then, here we go. So my Facebook is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indy Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indy238. YouTube is India White 123. And TikTok is Dr. India White. I'm super excited about that. And I'm excited to also remind you guys to check out the website, www.india-white.com, for books, blogs, and to schedule me for a speaking or coaching event. For those of you that have scheduled me, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I have remained busy for the most part. I've got some upcoming events. I'm excited to see you guys this week in Vermont. Woo-hoo, let's do this. I'm also excited about MCTM and Minnesota that's coming up. We've got the Florida Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Please register if not. We're excited about that. I'm also excited about the NCTE. I'm also excited about the NCTE Joint Conference I'll see you guys at. Also camped NCSM and NCTM conferences. So I try not to leave anything out. But if you're wanting to catch me, I'm hoping to catch you guys at some of these events. And you also catch my guest that is right next to me. I also wanted to remind you guys of the G.R.I.T mini workshop. Thank you to those that have recently registered or you're spreading the word about it. Check it out if you're wanting to know about G.R.I.T. This is, I think, the most succinct, most concise, and efficient way to learn about G.R.I.T really quickly is to taking this G.R.I.T mini workshop. Thank you, Robert Kaplinski and the Grassroots Workshop team for this wonderful opportunity. The G.R.I.T Academy is doing well. We have had students coming through, getting tutoring on SATs, ACTs, and district exams and beyond. So if you have a little one or, any student, grades K-12 and even college, that are trying to prepare for standardized testings, please send them our way. And so with that said, I now want to just come on here and talk with you guys about this amazing guest. This person here has been a personal friend. I remember when I first met this rock star here, it was at an event that I had, and I was struggling like crazy trying to manage my slides and everything else. And I asked them if they could take pictures and help me, and they were so wonderful. So with that said, this has been a wonderful journey with my friend TJ. And so welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast, an amazing educator, math coach expert, and author, and so much more, TJ Jemison. Welcome, TJ. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm doing great, and I'm excited to be coming from Florida as well. So
yes.
We're just a small car ride away from each other right now.
Yes, we are. So listen, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I currently live in Florida, although I was born in New Jersey, grew up in the Northeast, lived in Vermont for most of my life. So you're going to have to say hi to all my Vermont friends when you're up there. I started life as a special educator. And at that time, I knew I wanted to do something around literacy. And I wanted to be like a reading teacher or a reading recovery teacher because I had a dual certification of consulting teacher for special ed and reading for K-12 reading coordinator. And in my own district where I worked, it was pretty clear I wouldn't be able to kind of move in that direction because I had no seniority next to people who had lots of seniority. And this opportunity came along to get trained for math recovery one year that was fully paid for by Medicaid funds. And my principal was like, who wants to go? And there would have been 3, 4, 5 other people in front of me. And my luck, they were all pregnant. So I owe my trajectory to pregnant women because they were all like, yeah, I'd go.
That's
So I was
funny.
this like, rookie new person to the school, and I was the only one who put my hand up. So my principal was like, "Great, let's go." And that was kind of my journey. And so for the last, that was in 2001. So gosh, 24 years ago.
Wow.
So all of my work has been on math content and math pedagogy, and kind of I love the intersection of those, as well as the intersection of working with adult learners and pedagogy for teachers, as well as working with students. And there's lots of similarities there and some differences, but I like the intersection of those two things.
Well, this is just amazing, and it makes me think. Look out for the pregnant women
Yeah.
when you're needing an opportunity. So
Yes.
out
Yeah.
there.
So
um,
currently, I'm a consultant. I travel
yeah,
around the country, and
excellent.
pre-COVID, I actually went international. Unfortunately, COVID put a kibosh on that, and I haven't gotten any opportunities yet, but I know they're going to come
Right.
to go internationally again. So I would love
Yeah.
traveling, and I will pretty much go anywhere.
Excellent. Well, you've been, TJ, you've been very gritty. And for me, grit is great resilience and time. I want you to speak to how grit has played a role in your life and in your work as a successful educator and expert that you are today.
Sure. Well, I can think about it in kind of different levels, on a more kind of personal level. I growing up, it was just an expectation that I was going to go to college. Which I know is different for many people. For me, it wasn't, "Are you going to go to college?" It's, "What college are you going to go to?" And I remember not, I didn't want to go. I didn't know what to major in. I was like really lost, and my mom helped me quite a bit because she was like, "You will finish your school. You will get a degree. I don't care what it's in." And so she kind of lit the fire under me to kind of dig down. And when I didn't see a path forward, and I didn't, I just wanted to give up, and I'm like, I'll just work some job and make money and live. So like as a 21-year-old, 20-year-old at that time, I feel like I really had to dig in and show some grit to get through that, and stick with it. Later in life, obviously, you go through much bigger and more complicated and challenging times. But as a special educator, often you're not seen in the same light. So I actually started as a para educator for years while I was doing my graduate work, and what I've found in my experience is that there are hierarchies within schools, right? And in my school, kind of classroom teachers were at the highest, and if you weren't a classroom teacher, maybe your opinion didn't mean as much. So I feel like I've had to show a lot of grit in terms of, kind of like, yes, my opinion matters, and we're an instructional team. And just because you're the classroom teacher doesn't mean that you make all the decisions. Like, we're a team, we're an instructional team, and we're stronger together. So that takes kind of, when it's someone else's room, or well, really, it's a school's room, but they occupy it. There can be some tensions there. So I think throughout different schools, different classrooms, I've had to show some grit of like, stick up, and I'm an equal here, and I don't think I'm better than you, but I think together we're better. And then translating that to kind of just going into a school. I just started some work in outside of the New York City, and I'm just stepping in and like have never met these people, and I'm doing like a lesson with their kids, and that I feel like that takes a lot of grit to just go in, capture kids, get their attention, get them learning, get them talking, and have the teachers afterwards go, "Wow, you got that kid to talk." That
I
kind of
love that. I love that.
that
Right.
kind of stuff gets teachers'
Yeah.
attention. They want to learn from you.
Yep.
So, yeah, I guess those are just a couple examples. I don't know if they really answer your question, but
Yeah, sure. And I think too, the thing that kind of stuck out to me is, you started out in the classroom and now you're training teachers all over the nation, right?
yeah.
So I'm sure that came with some obstacles, that came with some transition. So I want you to look at my next question. How did the obstacles that you faced on this journey propel you onto your road of success today? Because I'm sure with all the junk going on right now in our nation, politically, whatever, teachers are trying to figure out how to transition. Unfortunately, some by force, some by choice, And so, with that said, what advice do you have for teachers that are trying to maybe repackage, repurpose, revamp and find another trajectory towards their path in education?
Wow, this is a great question. So I'm going to have to dig deep on this. Um, I
Yeah.
think that having a growth mindset. I think about myself when I was a young teacher. I had just finished my master's degree. I was the first person in my family to achieve a master's level of education. um, some people, they're the first ones to get a BA, but I was the first one to get a master's at the youngest. Just to throw
Awesome.
that in there for my family.
Congratulations.
And so at that time, as a young 20ish, I was about 29 when I finally finished my master's. I kind of thought, wow, well, I'm done with that. I've done this learning, and now I can just be and just move forward. And I know so much. And I think along the way, some of those obstacles have helped me to realize that you're never done learning. And I love the quote that says, when you think you've learned it all, you've lost your effectiveness.
That's true.
Because not letting go of that wonder and that humbleness and the ability to say, here's this brand new to teaching teacher, I can learn something from them, even though I've been in teaching almost 30 years. And so I think along the way, that's probably the biggest transition I had. And just to have that, and of course, all of Carol Dweck's work and Joel Bowler's around mindset and growth mindset came out. And so I think I was kind of doing that prior to it being a thing that was widely talked about. But I would say that for me was the biggest thing. So just having that growth mindset, and you're going to come up with challenges. Things are going to feel like they will never be able to be accomplished. And if you just keep at it and chip away, you will get there. Um, I think
So,
the other thing I would say is this, which is, there at my age, I just turned 55 2 weeks ago. So it was nice. Yeah, it was my birthday.
oh my God, no,
And
I gotta wig out, y'all. I'm sorry. TJ, you look every bit 46. What are you talking
yeah.
about?
But what I say at this age is, there have been times in my life where something's happened, and if I were younger, or when I was younger, my response was, my life is over. Like, this is the end of my life,
Oh, wow,
right?
wow,
Like, it's a life altering,
wow.
like a relationship breakup, or you get fired from a job, whatever it is. And what I've learned and what I recommend to people is, when those things happen, often, not always, but often for me,
Yeah,
it's pointed me in a better direction, and better things have happened, and you're not able to see that till you get beyond it and you can reflect back.
I love
So
that.
like the last time this happened, which was just a few years ago, I was just like, yeah, this really stinks, this really messes up my plans, but I'm not going to let it get me down, because I know every other time it has sent me in this more positive direction. And so I'm just going to ride the wave, and the wave might not be very big right now, but let's hope it gets bigger.
That's beautiful. You know, it makes me think of when I was an administrator. Um, I was at that road of transition, and I kind of wanted to talk a lot about transitions for our educators, our rockstar educators and principals, and those that are going through and being directly affected with things going on, which I just don't think is very fair. But anyways, I remember being an administrator and thinking that being a principal, assistant principal, I thought that was who I was, my identity.
Yeah.
So everything emulated, everything revolved around my work as an assistant principal. And when that door finally had to close because I had to move to finish my doctorate, I had to move out of state or out of the city into another town. And I remembered feeling depressed, feeling like I lost purpose, and I wasn't sure how to repurpose my life.
Hmm.
And so, I think it's imperative that you said that people have to understand to stop saying, my life is over. It's over. It's done. To start seeing that there's another direction. There's a scriptural reference where they talk about how one of the prophets was being fed by a woman, but then eventually that dried up. That dries up. The brook dries up. The provision dries up at the source that you're at. So then that means you have to start looking up to see where's the next opportunity. So
Yes.
I want you to come on here and encourage, and I will help you with this. Encourage our teacher group and those that are affected by the DEI things, those that are affected by just all the different ways going on in the Department of Education. My heart goes
Mhm.
out to all of them. But we've got to talk about that elephant in the room and give some insight as to how they can, repackage their brands. So I want you to talk now about not only that growth mindset, because you are a key example of that. I've seen your growth mindset. I've seen you evolve. I've seen your brand grow. I've seen people just take to you and like you because you're a likable person. You get it, and you really have a heart to help people. So now, TJ, I want us to kind of talk to these teachers about being open-minded about rebranding. What if they're like, I thought I'm like right at the edge of drop, like I'm at the edge of retirement, or I don't know if I should just be a stay-at-home mom or dad now. Like I don't know what to do, or all I have are credentials in education. How can they repackage their life now with that growth mindset and be gritty while doing it?
Yeah. Well, I wish I had like a simple answer to that, right? Because I would be in a
Right. I
limousine.
know. I think we're all trying to.
Uh, I think, well, I think it's really important when you, I mean, I don't want to go too deep here, but right, you think about the purpose of life or the meaning of life. And to
Yeah.
me, the purpose of life is not just to come here and do everything in your power to accumulate the most amount of money, right, at the expense of other people. I
Yeah.
certainly want nice things, and I want to be comfortable, but I don't want to do it at the expense of other people. And so education for me is a lifestyle. The occupation of being working in education, and I feel a lot of pride telling people that I work in the education field.
Right.
So I get very sad when I see people kind of moving away from the education field because it's a hard place to work right now.
Yeah.
It's
It's
been
tough.
getting harder every year,
Yeah.
and like you were saying, the current political climate
It's a
makes
hot
it
mess right now.
really
Yeah.
difficult, really difficult. So I think you have to ground into that like inner purpose and what's your mission. I saw some quote recently and it really stuck with me, but it was about people who don't let a mission guide them, kind of can get lost a little. And I feel like that is something that happened to me within the last couple of years. I attach myself more to like an organization or something that I thought would serve my purpose and my mission,
Right.
and it didn't. And so since then, I've interacted with some folks who have these really strong mission statements. So I think that might be a place to start for people. Like, think about what's your mission, what brings you joy, what are you passionate about, and if you're not working in a direction that serves that, stop doing those things. You know?
Right. Right. Exactly. And it's funny you say that because like I think getting quiet and knowing what your purpose is key. Like, I mean, I know like we're speakers, we do so much, right? But I was looking the other day and I'm like, yeah, I speak. I've been on over 200 stages, but what is my other purpose? What are my other things? And like you said, sometimes opportunities come and it's draining and it doesn't really benefit you directly. Teachers are working to repackage, and they're going to need advice for self-care as they're also repackaging. So, what tips can you give them in this trying time for repackaging and also having that self care?
Well, the very first thing I would hope is that folks can maybe have a longer vision, right? This is what the current place we're in is temporary. It's not going to stay this way. It may get a little worse for a little while, but if history teaches us anything, the arc of right, the arc always bends towards the light. So I think um, having a clear mission and a clear purpose is really helpful to make sense of what are
Right.
things that I should do or could do, that will lead me towards that. And sometimes they might be a little bird walk or a side path, but it still gets you there because it helps you make connections that help strengthen towards those missions. But I feel like a few years ago I wasn't staying true to what my purpose and my mission were. I didn't stick with those, and I kind of got a little led astray, and some one of those bad things happened. So I can kind of reflect and say, well, I allowed myself to go in a direction that wasn't serving my purpose and my mission.
I think
So I
it's
think,
beautiful.
sorry, go ahead.
I think it's beautiful that you're saying this because, like I said, we get pulled in so many different directions, especially as like a math coach or as a math teacher.
Yeah.
And it's like you want to save the world, but at the same time, if it's not for you, it's not for you. If the door is closed and it's just nothing's working out, then that's a sign that it's time to transition. It's time to move forward. So I think it's beautiful what you're saying. So go ahead and continue to talk about like just basically how in this you were able to repackage, realign yourself, and then go forward.
So I think maybe thinking about like I want to tell a story about what happened to me and one of my I have a large contract in Connecticut where I work in a district, and I got very sidetracked in one meeting with a group of teachers on I think they were talking about something to the effect of like, if I don't tell the students how to do this, they won't know. Right. And I always get, it kind of strikes a chord for me or hits a nerve, because I'm very much of like, let kids discover and,
Yes.
questions and supports and all those things to pull it out. And when you're getting lots of kids to talk almost all the time, you'll get that thing will come out. You don't have to tell them, show them, because then we're moving in the direction of mimicking and all that. And so I allowed that to kind of blind me a little. And so I said something in a way that it came out in the way I didn't intend it to, and it upset this teacher, and so my intention was pure, but the impact was it kind of turned her off, and in turn her team, because they were all close, to kind of doing the work that we were doing. And so I had to really step back and have some conversations and reflections, and that was allowed me to, in a future meeting with them, kind of just say, look, I apologize. I that was not my intention, but I'm owning my impact of what I did here. So again, just knowing what your mission is. And for me, my mission is about helping students. I want to help students be the best mathematicians they can be. And the way that I do that, the way I think is the best way, is by impacting teachers and educators. And how do we help educators be the best teachers of mathematics, so they can
Yes.
support students? And so when I do things unintentionally that, pushes a teacher away, then I'm not kind of leading to that mission. So I have to kind of keep coming back to that. Like, that's my mission. And even though that thing kind of sets me off, I've got to set it aside or find a way that I can address it, that which I hadn't yet, that it doesn't interfere with my mission. So I think those are the kind of things I think are so important. And I think just starting with your mission and what is it, your purpose and your passion and all those things. What is that? Because then when you have that and you have it clearly articulated, then you can kind of help use that to drive the decisions you make.
That's beautifully said and well put. And I like how you said your main mission is to make sure students are going to have the best teachers and that these teachers know how to really take care of these kids. And that also speaks to your work as a math coach expert, as you're always working with math coaches. And we just did a session together,
We
right, for
did.
the coaches. That was an amazing session. And we've got our session, I think, in FCTM, right?
We do,
So
coming up in
that's the
June.
person at FCTM. If you go, we'll be talking about coaching and grit, and we'll be talking about coaching and grit. So make sure you join us. Now, TJ, how can coaches stay gritty with what you've been able to kind of accumulate over the years? What advice do you have, tips that you have for coaches as to how they can stay gritty as they're coaching other math teachers?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they've got to understand what grit is, and kind of, you have some great tools for kind of looking at, what is my style and how strong am I in these different areas. So I think kind of looking at those and evaluating and kind of thinking about where you are and kind of understanding those and implementing them. We talked about some really crucial things, which are things that kind of go without being said, but I'm going to say them, like things like relationships. You've got to build relationships, and trust with people. And that just doesn't happen overnight. That takes time. So, for someone who's a new coach, you're going to have to maybe not be doing some of the things you want to be doing right away or think you should be doing, because I've got to build up this trust and make sure that educators know I'm there to support them and work side by side with them, not to be an evaluator, all those things that kind of kill and block coaching. I think it's really important in schools. Sometimes we tend to be very splintered and fragmented. So,
Yeah.
if there are many schools, in my own personal experience, have many more resources for literacy. So they have literacy interventionists and they have literacy coaches. And so if you're coming in, or a new position is made around math coaching, and the literacy folks already have some coaching cycles going, just take theirs, adopt that, tweak it so it makes sense for math, but don't try to do like some parallel separate system, because then you're competing, right? And now you're asking educators whose time is so valuable, you're asking them to learn maybe two different, coaching cycles or questioning styles or formats, any of those things. Just align them. There's really not that much difference when you think about coaching for ELA and coaching for math. So finding that alignment and meeting with and talking to those ELA folks so that there's that commonality across different content areas. Because so many elementary teachers are generalists. They're going to experience all of those.
Right. I think this is beautiful. Now, one thing I've also noticed is that there has been a push for authenticity and people keeping it real, especially like in the education space. You just talked about how people are splintered and they're going all different directions and they just don't know how to really be authentic with students and create relationships and being authentic with each other. Some teachers fear their boss, right? Some teachers, they don't really like those they work with. There's like a lot of different variables taking place. So,
Yes.
what advice do you have for them to keep it real without like losing their job or getting canceled or whatever, but to still be authentic and keep it real while working with students and with each other and building grit?
Well, I think when we try to do too much, or I'll speak for myself. When I try to do too much, I can get overwhelmed, and then I feel like I'm rushing, or maybe someone says the wrong thing, or it's that person that's not my favorite person, and so they just maybe rub me the wrong way, and I snap. So I think the more we can do more with less, right? I'm thinking about like having one really valuable or great task versus trying to get a bunch of problems in. We're so on a hamster wheel trying to do these curriculums and these pacing guides and all this stuff. And yes, it's all important stuff, all the standards and all of that. But if we're not teaching students, if we're not responding to the students in front of us, then it doesn't really matter. None of that stuff really matters. So it's always finding that way to intermarry and interconnect what we know about our students that are sitting in front of us, because every group of students is a little different, and understanding the standards and where they're going. So I think that when you feel calmer, right, you have better thoughts. So it's easier when you're thinking about the instruction you're doing and the assessment you're doing, and it's just not so much stuff that you have to kind of lay out, that it's a more narrow pathway of information that you're kind of evaluating. I think that can help maybe center people more, and to feel less of that splintered and scatteredness. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes any
And
sense.
it does, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit too about like with the whole authenticity piece, and you're saying like getting to know the student or the people sitting in front of you. And sometimes we do show up to the table and we're tripping, right? Sometimes we have a vibe and we're like, I don't know if I really like that person. I don't know if I really vibe with that culture group. I don't know, whatever. Like we've got our qualms and our biases. We all do. So sometimes you do have to get quiet and just check yourself. So do you have a time where like maybe you're working in a school district or working with some teachers or students or community members, and you have to check yourself and kind of like own it and say, oops, okay, I'm gonna readjust so that I can be effective while servicing these people?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the best way to do that, not to sound repetitive, but is to go back to that mission and that purpose, right? Like, are the things I'm doing and saying and the ways I'm acting, are they serving that purpose and that mission and that passion that I have, right? If I'm allowing this other thing to sidetrack away from that, then it's really not doing me justice to get me further along the path towards that mission that I have.
That's beautiful. And the thing is this, like when I was, an administrator, we focused on how we could not suspend students. When I first, and I think too, like I had to realize my mission was to help students get forward, not to suspend them and put them on a path towards school to prison pipeline. But I was just talking to one of my former administrator colleagues just yesterday, but when I first started as an administrator, I was a hot mess. I was suspending everything that walked because that was the power that I had. I thought,
Yeah,
I have like this gavel in my hand. I can go to the computer and suspend. And I thought that was my purpose, to put a kid in suspension towards
yeah,
school to prison pipeline, because under my title as an assistant principal, that was what was expected, right? But that's
right.
not what's expected. What's
Mhm.
expected is I'm supposed to be able to have resolutions and solutions for teachers and students and parents in the community to help get this student across the stage towards graduation. And I think that sometimes we lose focus of the mission because maybe we don't know how to use power. We abuse that power.
Yes.
We get into a new position and then our ego is tripping and we've got all these other things and we've not checked ourselves. So I think it's beautiful. So I don't know if you have any insight as to any tools that you might have been able to use to maybe help you kind of regulate, like how to like balance power that you've been given. Like maybe you're, given a keynote, or maybe you're given a director position or a principal position or something like that. What advice do you have for people for balancing that power and remaining authentic as they're building their grit?
It's funny. The thing that's popping in my head are like report cards, because I think when you think about power in
Yeah,
education,
yeah,
report cards and the teachers who decide the grades that go on report cards are very powerful. Um, and again, for me, it goes back to the purpose. Like, what is the purpose of school? The purpose of school and education is to help students learn and to help them prepare them for some sort of productive life outside of K-12 education. And so if you think about a grade and one of the things that bothers me in education is we don't always value or utilize the research that is out there. And I don't want to say research says, because research never
good.
says anything, right? Research
Yeah,
suggests, and all the research that I've read suggests that grades like an A, B, C, D do nothing to advance learning. If our goal and our objective is to be helping students learn, right? Then if we expel them, if we belittle them, if we do these things, that's not going to help them learn. And unfortunately, grades don't as well either. Within this one research they found, they talked about comments, right? That comments only help the most to help students move their learning forward. Comments on, "Ooh, I like this," and comments about, "I wonder if you did something different here, or this part is maybe a little weak, maybe you could strengthen this part," right? That's really constructive and helps students move forward. So in a roundabout way, I'm thinking about, how do you think about what resources we have? And there's tons of research that's been done in education. Like, look at all of John Hattie's impact work,
right.
right? So
Effective
what
teaching
are things
practices,
that
right?
have impact? And we have to, as professionals and as experts in the field of education, we have to think about that research and use that research. So I think sometimes that can, right, you can think about your emotional self and your intellectual self. And so sometimes I think our emotional self takes over. Like when I heard you talk about the suspending kids, like, this is what I think I do as in this role, versus we know what the research suggests, at least, and sometimes we do things that it says are not the right things to do. So how do we use that research as experts and as professionals to then move forward towards what we're hoping to do, which is to educate students and help them lift themselves up in the future.
Exactly. And what you were saying, that it made me think of that subjectivity element that we all have when you're grading for that project, that poster project, or you're giving a final grade on an essay and things like that, and or you're totaling up the grades and you're seeing that the student could have a 92.5 84, or they could have 89.6, depending on how you grade, whatever, and or 89.4, and you can either keep them at that low B, or you can help them through your biases to win. And I think that as teachers, we need to be real, and this is what we need to understand. If we're not taking your advice, TJ, and setting kids up to win, guess what? We need to get out of the way. If we are
Yes.
penalizing kids and we are in an emotional rut and we have issues with students of all different backgrounds and stuff like that, and we're targeting kids and we're suspending kids without fault for a pencil or for the way their hair looks or some other kind of frivolous idea, we need to give it up. We need to
Yes.
leave education, please. Leave,
Yes.
because you're doing damage, right? If you cannot help all students win, get out of the way. You've caused too much damage. And I say that on
Absolutely.
behalf of all students, in particular our Gen Zers, who are sick and tired of the foolishness that they've had to
Yeah.
deal with in certain classrooms. So I
Yeah.
think this is beautiful what you're saying. And so, with that said, I now want to transition and say, do you have any last minute nuggets that you want to share with teachers and leaders that are watching this podcast today?
Yeah. So, well, as you were talking, I thought of one more thing, kind of building on what we were just talking about. And it's pretty simple. So, one thing I've started to do, there's been this transition in the last several years, and of course now at this moment in time we're transitioning away from those. But I think that's just a blip. But one thing I've done that's really simple and anyone can adopt is anytime I put an image, a task, a problem in front of students, I start with it myself, and of course, do the math and look for things I'm hoping to see, that anticipation. But the thing I would suggest people do is ask yourself these two questions. One is, how does this task, image, problem, how does it open up access for all students, regardless of their gender, identity, gender, race, background, religion? And then the other question, the kind of bookend question with that is, how might this be marginalizing, unintentionally marginalizing for certain students? And it's not to say if you think like, oh gosh, it could potentially marginalize for this student, that you still wouldn't use it, but you just wouldn't want every task you put in front of your students to always have that, ooh, this one student or this group of students might be marginalized if I use this. You got to be aware of that. So I found that to be a helpful kind of guide, you're never going to get rid of your biases, right? You mentioned we all have these
Right.
biases. We're kind of, it's baked into our culture and our country and our world. But I think if I can at least raise my awareness of potential red flags, the least I can do is then be aware and maybe be more honed in and look for those things and then respond when I see a negative impact.
I think it's beautiful, and I like how see people like you need to be in the education space because you're intentionally looking how to not marginalize, and that's what
Yes.
I mean, TJ. For those that are listening, or teachers that are working towards marginalization, then they need to leave education. I mean, honestly, it's a hot mess. Nobody wants to go to the classroom anyway, and so those kids actually flock and they skip their class to come to my class, or they go to TJ's class anyway. So we do need to make sure that we're doing what we can to open up access for all students and to really be there to intentionally include all learners so that even marginalized students feel like they can win and that they belong in that classroom. So, TJ, thank you so much for being a part of the Let's Get Gritty podcast. And so,
Absolutely.
with that said, how can we reach you if people wanting to book you to speak or book you to do some trainings, whatever? How can we reach you?
Absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. So I don't have a website yet. I've been thinking
Oh,
about,
we got to fix that.
yeah, that'll come sometime in the future if it happens.
Yes,
But I have email, so tgvt at
gotcha.
Gmail, and I know you have that. I am on Twitter/X at TEEDJVT, TGVT, which was a nickname friends called me, Tej, and then Vermont for VT for Vermont. And mostly I'm on Blue Sky at TJ Math. So I try to post on Blue Sky the most, and people can get me on any of those.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing. And so, with that said, guys, thanks so much for joining TJ and I on the Let's Get Gritty podcast. This has been a wonderful episode. Again, if you're wanting to be featured, please send me an email at india.white.123 at gmail.com, and I'll get with you guys. I also wanted to remind you guys of these upcoming events. I will see you guys shortly in Vermont. Also, check out the website whenever you get a chance. If you came in late to the podcast, my website is simply www.india-white.com. I'm here to help assist you guys however you need me to. And so, with that said, guys, thanks so much. Stay gritty. And we'll see you later.